He got all his songs already. How you think he got so hot? Came out with all them tapes. I did that. I put them hooks together. Yeah. I made incredible music. All he did was rhyme 16s. Well, you know, I made incredible. I made the hooks. I made the melodies. Yeah. I made the shit, dog. I'm the man. I banged it just enough to get my room so I could ram his shit up, ram it up his ass. Right? My window was there. He tried to grab me. So when he came in the window, I punched him in the face.
Max B and Jim Jones used to move like family, tighter than most real blood relatives. But once Jim tossed that bond like it meant nothing, everything flipped in a heartbeat. That loyalty turned into a Cold War, and Max switched from being Jim's hit-making powerhouse into the one man he never expected to face.
So Jim Jones, compare the names. Look, Max Bigavel, Jim Jones. That don't even add up. That's not on my level, man.
People in Harlem still talk about how fast that love turned into chaos. And every move Max made after that felt like a message, loud and clear. From whispers about him pulling up on Jim, to claims that he even messed with his girl and left his whip looking destroyed, Max wasn't playing around. He moved through Harlem like a storm, and every corner felt that pressure. But before all the beef and drama, the story of Max B starts with Charlie Wingate, a kid born right in the heart of Harlem's Abraham Lincoln houses, where toughness wasn't a choice, it was survival.
Is Max B, aka Max Bigavel. We know Bigavel stands for Big Jig and Pac, right? But where did the
Big
name...
Jig and Machiavelli, baby.
Yeah.
Big Jig and Machiavelli.
Charlie came up in a world full of pain, shaking hands with struggle from the moment he could walk. His mother battled heavy addiction and kept getting locked up, leaving his grandmother to hold the family together. She became his backbone, the one person who kept him grounded. Even when the streets tried to pull him in with that fast life that swallowed so many before him. But even in all that chaos, young Charlie found a spark. He discovered his voice in the boys' choir of Harlem, and that's where the early roots of the wavy Max B sound were planted. That smooth, lazy, melodic delivery he later became famous for came straight from those choir days. But no melody was strong enough to drown out the harsh reality waiting outside those doors.
Boyfriend Charlie Wingate, aka Max B, a rapper, about the men's money. Then Wingate reaches out to this man, Calvin Leardom.
By 18, the streets caught up with him and pushed him down a path that wasn't built for peace. In 1997, he caught a robbery charge and ended up doing around 8 years inside. But instead of breaking him, prison sharpened him. When he stepped out in 2005, he didn't just come back home, he stepped out with a new name, a heavier presence, and a swagger that told the world he had lived what others only rapped about.
It all began the morning of September 22nd at the Fort Lee Holiday Inn. Police are called there after a man is shot to death. The victim, David Taylor from Florida, was staying in room 227.
That's when Max Bigavel was born, a name inspired by giants Biggie, Machiavelli, Tupac, and Jigga. He believed he carried a piece of each of them. Biggie's hypnotic flow, Pac's pain, Machiavelli's mind, and Jay-Z's boss confidence. Max didn't just want to be another Harlem rapper. He wanted to be a walking legend, the perfect blend of everything he admired. When Max came home, Harlem was hot. The Diplomats had Uptown on lock. Cameron, Jim Jones, and the whole Dipset movement had the city buzzing. Max linked back up with Cam, who introduced him to Jim Jones, and from there everything moved fast. Jim signed him to Bird Gang, and Max started cooking up music with Harlem legend Dame Grease. Their chemistry was instant fire. In 2006, Max dropped $1 Million Baby, and the streets couldn't get enough of him. His voice, his swagger, that raw edge, everything about him felt new and dangerous at the same time. With Stack Bundles joining the movement too, Jim was sitting on pure gold. Max became the go-to guy, laying down hooks and verses that made every Jim Jones track sound like an anthem. But as always, Max carried the streets with him, and trouble wasn't far behind. In September 2006, everything took a wild turn. Max's ex, Gina Conway, told him about a flashy guy named Alan J. Plowden, a dude dripping in money from a mortgage and mail fraud game, rolling in big cash and bigger cars. That little piece of information was enough to spark a chain reaction Harlem still whispers about. Gina told Max everything about this flashy guy, and people say that mix of jealousy and hunger for fast money pushed him over the edge. According to her, Max made it sound like a smooth play hit, a lick, grab the cash, and everybody walks away shining like bosses. But once this story unraveled, nothing about it looked simple anymore. What happened next is still argued like a street legend, but the ending is cold and clear. Max wasn't even there when the situation exploded, but prosecutors painted him as the brain behind the whole setup. Gina Conway, who was juggling dealing, stripping, and her own chaotic lifestyle, got on that stand and pointed the finger straight at Max.
Got him in his drive already. I don't owe nothing. He got all his songs already. How you think he got so hot? Came out with all them tapes. I did that. I put them hooks together. I made incredible music. All he did was rhyme 16s. Well, you know, I made the hooks. I made the melodies. Yeah. I made the shit, dog. I'm the man.
She told the court that Max sent her and his stepbrother Kelvin Sims to run up on Alan Plowden at a Holiday Inn in New Jersey, thinking they could walk in and walk out richer than before. The plan was supposed to be easy. Slide in while Plowden was out clubbing, grab whatever cash was in the room, and disappear. But nothing went smooth that night. Gina and Sims were reportedly driving in circles, missing exits, and wasting precious time like amateurs. By the time they finally reached the hotel room, Plowden was already back inside, knocked out next to another woman. And as if things weren't messy enough, another man, David Taylor, walked in at the worst possible moment. That's when everything spiraled. Sims panicked, and instead of backing down, he fired a shot straight into Taylor's face, execution style, turning a sloppy robbery into a full-blown murder. One move ruined every life attached to this plan. Gina Conway fell first. The moment police grabbed her, she folded fast. She gave up everything she knew to protect herself. She wrote a 169-page statement and put Max's name all over it, claiming he was the one who set the whole thing in motion. She said Max promised her everything, money, loyalty forever, if she helped him pull it off. And when the feds came for Max, they didn't knock softly, they stormed in with charges that could erase a man's whole future. Max was hit with felony murder among other heavy counts, and the judge slapped him with a massive $2 million bail. Sitting in that cold cell, time froze for Max, but outside, the world kept moving, and Jim Jones moved faster than anyone expected. Jim, the same man who signed Max and pushed him musically, suddenly exploded everywhere. He dropped "We Fly High," the anthem the whole country started yelling Ballin.
Anger just enough to get my room so I could ram it up in. Right? My window was there. He tried to grab, so he came in the window. I punched him in his face.
Overnight, it became his biggest hit ever, and Max claimed he ghost wrote it. He said he was behind that hook and plenty of Jim's other big records, watching someone else shine off his pen while he sat behind steel bars. As Jim cashed checks and did interviews, Max was locked up, fighting for his life and trying to keep his name alive. Jim agreed to bail Max out, but only under one brutal condition. Max had to sign over his publishing and lock himself into 6 full albums under Jim's control. Max was stuck in that cold cell with barely any options, and desperation will make a man swallow things he never would on the outside. So he signed the papers. Jim walked away owning every piece of the wavy sound, and Max walked out with temporary freedom that already felt borrowed. When Max B stepped out of jail in July 2007, he wasn't the same man. He came out colder, sharper, and carrying a level of resentment you could feel from across the block. He was broke, betrayed, and chained to a contract that sold off his future to someone he once trusted like family. Jim Jones, the same man he once called a brother, now looked like the person cashing in the most from Max's downfall while he sat in a cell watching his name echo through the streets. While Max was locked up, mixtapes, street DVDs, and hood legends kept spreading his name. Fans refused to let the wavy movement die, and every time people yelled it out, Max realized something: Jim had no plans to push him forward. If Jim wasn't going to help him shine, Max was about to start swinging back. He wasn't dealing with music politics anymore. He felt straight up robbed. Max didn't just lose a position, he lost his whole publishing. Every hook he crafted, every melodic run, every smooth ad-lib, every catchy bar checks from all of it went straight into Jim's pockets. Knowing that made the betrayal burn even deeper. This wasn't business to Max anymore, it was personal. The brotherhood was done, the loyalty was cracked in half, and Max walked away from Bird Gang with a heart frozen and a mind locked on revenge. Once Max broke off, he wasn't alone for long. He crossed paths with French Montana, and that link-up changed the whole landscape. French wasn't the chart-topping rapper he eventually became. Back then, he was a gritty Bronx hustler, known for his Cocaine City DVDs that showed raw street life. French had his own messy history with Jim, tied to a shooting situation and rumors that Jim was spreading negative talk about him.
Right around that time, Max B gets found guilty on 9 of 11 counts, including felony murder. And he gets sentenced to, was it 75 years?
Yeah, 75.
So when Max and French joined forces, it was bigger than music. It was a bond built from having the same enemy. Together, they formed Coke Wave, a crew that would become one of the most iconic and fearless movements the mixtape world had ever seen. Max already knew the industry wasn't going to rescue him. He had no label support, no publishing, and no backing from anyone with power. But what he did have was a voice the streets loved and a talent that couldn't be buried. So Max did what real hustlers do when the doors get slammed in their face. He went underground and built his own lane. He started dropping music for free, letting the people hear everything the industry tried to hide. But this wasn't just music. These were verbal bombs aimed straight at Jim Jones and everyone connected to him. And Max didn't hold a single punch back. The first shot fired came through his mixtape Public Domain 3. A project laced with shots, shade, and open warnings that Max was done staying quiet. He wanted the whole world to know the truth behind the breakup, and he said it with a voice that sounded like he had nothing left to lose. The mixtape cover said everything without Max even speaking. He stood in a graveyard, posted up beside tombstones with names like Millie Jim Jones and Vanilli Joel Santana carved into the stone. He was comparing them to Milli Vanilli, the infamous duo who got exposed for lip-syncing their whole career. And in Max's eyes, Jim and Joel's were doing the same thing, riding a wave they never built in the first place. Max mocked them without hesitation. He dropped tracks with titles like Lip-Sigh Rapping, throwing shots about how they weren't moving the culture without him. He rapped lines like, "I know them dudes need me. I was giving them the loots, but them dudes done blew it." Every bar sounded like a warning, and the streets felt the sting in every word. But Max didn't stop at the music. He went for reputations, personal lives, and the whole image Jim Jones had spent years building. One of the wildest moments in their feud came when Max dropped the track She Touched It in Miami, where he claimed Chrissy Lampkin, Jim's longtime partner, was involved with him in private ways.
You were sentenced to 75 years. But then last July, you said you got reduced to 20 years and then to 12 years.
He painted Jim as a man being played behind his back, and Max laughed through the verses like he enjoyed every second of exposing it. The streets ran with the story instantly. Jim Jones was stunned. He didn't expect Max to swing this hard, and his reaction looked shaken. Jim tried to deny everything, tried to brush Max off like he was just another rapper who never reached his full potential. He pushed the line that Max didn't write, "We fly high," even though people had already heard Max's vocals all over the reference tracks. Fans started wondering if Jim's place in Dipset history was as solid as they once believed. Max moved like someone who wasn't bluffing. He wanted war and he didn't hide it. He claimed Jim once tried to ambush him by blocking his car in a parking lot, but Max said he wasn't caught slipping. According to him, he rammed Jim's Bentley out of the way and even got a few hits in before speeding off. The story sounded wild, but Max proudly showed off the dents like badges of honor. French Montana and others co-signed the whole situation, and the legend around Max grew even bigger. By November 2008, Max and French were ready to confront Jim directly. They rolled into Manhattan Deep, walked into the building where Jim was recording, and made it clear his safety wasn't guaranteed anymore. Max later claimed Jim saw them approaching and called the police, which only made the tension worse for his image in the streets. Not long after, their squads clashed at a Brooklyn club, turning the place into pure chaos. Chairs flying, security overwhelmed, and K9 units rushing in. This wasn't rap beef anymore. This was real street hostility. By the time everything cooled down, Max had done more than drop diss tracks. He turned Jim Jones into a walking punchline, and the energy around their war had the whole city watching. Max turned into a cult hero before the world even knew how deep his story really ran. He became the type of artist who didn't need label approval or industry cosigns. His voice alone made the streets move. Even with contracts giving him nothing and systems working against him, Max found a way to keep his legend alive, dropping music that still gets blasted today like it just came out yesterday. But while his beef with Jim Jones kept spreading across the mixtape circuit like smoke in the air, Max B was quietly stepping into the biggest fight of his entire life. It wasn't a rap battle, wasn't a street clash, this was a courtroom showdown that could freeze his wave forever. On June 9, 2009, Max B walked into the Bergen County Courthouse with the same swagger he always carried, like a man who fully believed his own truth. Cameras were everywhere, fans were watching, and Max moved with confidence like he had nothing to fear. His legal team talked bold too, telling people they tore apart the prosecution's main witness during cross-examination. That witness was Gina Conway, the one woman tied to every part of this case. She turned herself in and became the government's key piece, testifying against Max and his stepbrother, Kelvin, in exchange for a lighter sentence. Max's lawyer pushed the idea that she was acting out of heartbreak and desperation, twisting the story to protect herself. But a courtroom isn't the streets. You can't win with energy, legacy, or presence. When the jury walked back into that room, everything Max believed about loyalty and street code shattered in seconds. The verdict hit like a hammer: guilty on 9 out of 11 counts, including armed robbery, conspiracy, aggravated assault, and felony murder. The moment was heavy enough to silence even Max's strongest supporters. The prosecution painted Max as the architect behind the whole situation, even though he wasn't there when anything went down. They said he set up the plan, encouraged Gina and Kelvin to hit the spot, and expected to reap the benefits without being in the room. And that entire picture rested almost completely on Gina's testimony. Gina struck a deal with prosecutors. Her murder charges were reduced to armed robbery and manslaughter, and she walked away with a recommended 18-year sentence. The defense tried to destroy her credibility, saying she exaggerated, twisted facts, and created new stories just to cut time off her own sentence. The wildest twist came when Gina even testified that Max knew nothing of a robbery, claiming she used Max's name just to convince Kelvin to go through with the plan in the first place. But later, she flipped the script and blamed Max entirely, which the defense argued was because she felt hurt, angry, and desperate to save herself. Max's lawyers tried everything to convince the jury she was inconsistent, emotional, and acting out of self-interest. But the jurors didn't budge. They believed her final version of events, and the weight of her words crushed Max's chances at walking free. Max B was officially sentenced on September 3, 2009, hit with a crushing 75-year prison term that stunned the entire industry. He wouldn't even be eligible for parole until 2042. Overnight, Max went from being a buzzing street legend to another inmate locked behind steel doors, and the silence around him felt unreal. While the streets were hurting, Jim Jones seemed to move like he had scored the final checkmate. From a business angle, Jones believed he won. Max was locked up. His voice couldn't shake the room anymore, and Jim still owned every shred of publishing attached to Max's legacy. Every hook Max wrote, every melody he crafted, every sound he pioneered, checks from all of it flowed right into Jim's pockets. Jim even took shots whenever the cameras were rolling. He called Max goofy nicknames, joked about him falling off, and tried to paint him as someone who never reached his potential. In interviews, Jim moved like Max didn't matter at all, like he was just old stock collecting dust, something he once used but never planned to bring back out again. But the situation wasn't nearly as locked down as Jim believed. Even behind bars, Max B refused to fade away. His fanbase was too loyal, his name rang too heavy, and his wave was too strong to slip into the shadows. Max stayed active from inside, sending letters, making calls, connecting with French Montana, independent labels, DJs, and anyone who could help him keep that wavy sound alive. Then, in May 2010, everything flipped with one massive legal win. A judge ruled that Jim Jones no longer had any control over Max B's music career, not a drop of it. The court found that Max had fulfilled the terms of both contracts he signed with Jim in 2005 and 2007. In simple words, Max was free, at least creatively. Even though he was still sitting in a cell, those paperwork chains were shattered. His music was finally back in his own hands, and that alone changed the entire power dynamic. That freedom allowed Max to release his long-awaited album, Vigilante Season, in 2011. And when it hit the streets, people realized something huge: Max's influence had never faded. The wavy flow he built, that melodic gangster swing he pioneered, turned into the blueprint for an entire generation of rappers. You couldn't turn on the radio without hearing pieces of Max in someone's voice, whether it was their cadence, their harmonies, or even the way they talked about waves and vibes. His sound had quietly become the cheat code for the new era. Then came the twist nobody expected in 2016. After serving 7 years, everything suddenly shifted again. Max's new attorneys came in swinging with a legal bombshell that shocked everybody watching the case. They argued that Max's first lawyer didn't just fumble, he failed him completely. Instead of building the strongest defense possible, the lawyer was allegedly more focused on chasing a big payday, expecting Max's rap career to explode if he walked free. That angle opened the door for something powerful, a post-conviction relief motion that actually worked. The judge vacated Max's original 75-year sentence, sending shockwaves through all of New Jersey. Max later pled guilty to aggravated manslaughter as part of a strategic plea deal, and that deal ripped 55 years off his time. The sentence dropped from 20 years down to 12, and since Max had already done a chunk of that behind bars, his release was suddenly visible on the horizon. Max wasn't going to die in prison after all. His official release date was stamped as November 9, 2025, and for the first time in years, hope felt real again. By this point, Max B wasn't just a rapper, he had turned into a myth, a symbol, a whispered legend whose influence touched every corner of hip-hop. From underground ciphers to major studio sessions, his fingerprints were everywhere. Even Kanye West stepped into the wave trying to name his 2016 album Waves, until the Wave community let him know the original creator was Max. Kanye publicly acknowledged him and even featured his voice on a track. Drake, Wiz Khalifa, and others openly credited Max as a major influence. And in one rare honest moment, Jim Jones himself admitted Max B could have been bigger than Drake if he hadn't gotten locked up. That statement alone showed how powerful Max's presence truly was. Now, with 2025 approaching fast, a new question rose over the whole story like a cloud. Are Max and Jim still enemies, or is the war finally over? Speaking from prison, Max sounded like a changed man. He said he was older now, calmer, a husband and father of 4, focused on peace instead of old grudges. His tone felt different, like the rage had melted into wisdom. He even hinted that maybe, just maybe, the hatchet could be buried one day. But Jim Jones wasn't matching that energy. Jim and French Montana reconnected in 2023, even dropping music together, but when the topic of Max came up, Jim kept his distance. He said he didn't wish Max any harm. But he also wasn't trying to sit down, rebuild, or pretend the past didn't happen. In Jim's words, Max was a different situation, meaning that wound still wasn't healed. And now, with Max B's freedom only months away, the streets are holding their breath. Will the wave return stronger than ever? Will he step back into the booth and reclaim the sound everyone borrowed? Will the old tension fade, or will the past come crashing back the moment Max touches down? One thing is certain, when Max B steps out in 2025, the whole game will feel that ripple. His wave never died, it just paused, waiting for the man who created it to come home and finish the story his way.